A good golf swing needs to start well. It's very easy to make errors right at the very beginning, and today we're going to have a look at 3 of the most common errors on the start of the takeaway. You sort these out and all of a sudden starting your swing correctly is a piece of cake. Hi, I'm Peter Knight and I've created this channel, Peter Knight Golf, to help you play the best golf you possibly can. Today we're looking at the takeaway and specifically 3 ways that you can mess it up. So 3 things to look out for. The first of them, and probably the most common, is increasing tension through left shoulder, left arm, left hand, or all 3. Much more common with the left than the right. So you might set yourself up correctly. And when I've got my hands set correctly, my hands match to my club face, or both hands are matched to the club face. And in this case, we're talking more about the left hand, so the left hands match really nicely. If you find that your hand's twisting at the top, at the start of the backswing, when you get to the top of the swing, you might find that your club face is very, very closed at the top. So you can see my club face is pointing directly to the sky. Ideally, it's going to be pointed somewhere around about 45 degrees. If it was pointed straight toward the ground, it would be open. Now, if I set myself up correctly and then tighten through here, and my hands change. Now my hand might not appear to really move any differently on the grip, particularly as I start back. I might not know that. And then I get to the top of the swing and my club face is really, really closed. The key thing here is to have the awareness that when you're setting yourself up and beginning that backswing movement, that you notice that you don't allow that hand to twist. Here's a good check for you. If I hold my hand directly out in front of me, my wrist is vertical here. When I hold the club correctly with my left hand, if my left hand is set correctly on the grip and I've got the correct amount or low amount of tension in my hand, my wrist is also quite close to vertical. When I begin my backswing, when I get to here, as I've started back, there's been no change in my wrist. So as I've twisted back, there's been no change with my wrist here, which is probably difficult to see from this view. As I start back, again, if I'm twisting my hand, you can see from this view, definitely that hand has shifted, but the club face looks okay. So that's the first thing. Monitor that movement so that you can get the feel of beginning the backswing without changing the tension in your hands. If you have been moving your hands, it'll probably feel quite strange to do that. The second thing is getting the order of backswing movement out of time. So when I start my backswing, ideally I'm going to start with arms, upper body, and club all starting to move back together. Now there's no tension in my arms, and then eventually my hips will start to turn as well. When I get to the top of the backswing, ideally my upper body has turned about double what my lower body has. So let's say my upper body has turned 80 degrees, then my hips will have turned 40. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a rate of turn in the backswing where my upper body is turning at about double the speed of my lower body, just to get a nice smooth wind up. Really common error is players who start the backswing by letting their hips turn. If the hips initiate the turn, it's very easy for me to get the club moving incorrectly as I start back. Plus it makes that smooth winding of my lower body and upper body quite awkward as I go back. So one thing that you can practice is just start back, make small movements where you don't allow your hips to turn at all. Now I'm only turning my upper body here about maybe 20 degrees. Then I can slowly let my hips turn a little bit more. So I get the feeling of getting that wind up and then putting it into a swing, slowly watching what I'm doing and then making the speed faster. The other thing too is if I initiate the movement with my hips, it can very easily throw the path of the club and throw the path of my hands out as well. So if the path of the club's going back incorrectly, then one of the things that you can look at is your hips. May not be your hips, but it's one that you can look at. The third thing is as the club swings back, a lot of players will try and initiate movement by allowing their upper body to move. So from here, if I start my backswing by allowing my upper body to move, that again is going to change, or it's going to move my body out of center immediately and it can change the path that I should be swinging the club on. Now, one way that you can check this, not today because the sun's not out, but let's say I'm standing and the sun's behind me casting my shadow forwards. So I can see the shadow of my body on the ground. As I turn back, I want to turn and keep my head nice and stable. So as it moves back, if I have a tiny bit of movement, I'm talking about like very, very small movement, a centimetre, a couple of centimetres, an inch, if you're a US watcher, then as you go back, ideally that amount of movement or less, so that I can stay nice and steady. I said I'd give you 3, I'm going to give you one more. And this is also quite a common thing. When the club swings back, if I use my arms to lift the club up, so watching from here, correct movement is upper body and arms and club all start back together. If I start lifting up with my arms, or a combination of arms and hands in the backswing, that'll prevent my body from turning correctly. So you can see my arms are moving back, but my body's not turning very much. So there's 4 things. Watch for the tension, watch for the order of movement going back, keep your body nice and stable, and allow the rotation of your body to take the club back rather than picking it up. Check for all those 4 things in your swing if you think that you might be upsetting your takeaway with any one or a combination of those things, and it should make a big difference to your ball striking.